What's up, everybody? Thanks for checking out this video today. So this video is going to be part 5 of the Mustang Bullitt build, where we finish up the supercharger install. If you guys haven't checked out part 3 of the supercharger install, be sure to check that out. So I've actually went ahead and finished the install. I didn't want to record the last little bit. All I had really left to do on this deal was to put the belt on. If you guys remember on the last video, I ordered a green belt from Gates. It's actually their Fleet Runner belt. You'll see them on a lot of superchargers. They're really strong, they last a long time, and they have a good grip to them, so you don't get a lot of belt slip. And so I ordered that, I got that put on, and then from there I basically just had to put the intercooler on and finish putting the last bit of hoses on it. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this camera around and kind of just go over what I did to finish this up, and then from there I'm going to do a walk around on the car. All right. So as you can see, she is all done, and man, it really turned out nice. I love the way it looks on this car. These are pretty cool kits. I mean, the way that the cold air kit comes around, loops back around. They include a mass airflow with a filter, and we basically used the stock mass airflow sensor, as you can see down there. We do have to extend the harness. This is the factory harness right here. The kit came with wiring to extend the harness. They were different colors. So I basically cut the big tail off, soldered on the wires, put it all back together in wire loom, and instead of looping it over the top, I went down underneath. I just think it gives it a little bit cleaner look. So where we left off on the last video was running a 5/8 heater hose from this reservoir. There's a reservoir right here for the charge cooler. There's a hose that comes out the bottom. I had it running along the frame, and it came out and went to the top of the water pump for the cooler. Before I put the bumper cover on, you could actually see that. So from there, I was getting ready to put this charge cooler on. There was a couple things that we had to do. I put the fittings on the workbench. As you can see, this is a 90-degree fitting for a 5/8 hose, and it had to be angled up at a certain way. So I put this charge cooler in here. I mocked it up. I went ahead and marked where I wanted this fitting to go. I also had to mark this lower silicone coupler that went from the supercharger to the cooler, because it was a 45 coupler and it had to be clocked a certain way. So once I got it clocked where I needed it, I also marked it. Pulled the cooler back off, got on the workbench, and I went ahead and sealed these up and put this one on first. Since it was a 90, I had to use a 13/16 wrench and really had to tighten it up. I mean, you want to make sure the thing don't leak. So I really had to crank down on this to bring it around to this angle where I wanted it. Once I got that done, I put the straight fitting on here. This is another 5/8 hose barb. That one took a 7/8, and I just used a closed-in wrench on that one and just tightened the crap out of it as well. So once I got that on, then I went ahead and put this coupler on the cooler where I had it clocked. Went ahead and tightened the clamp down on that. I also went ahead and put the bypass valve on. So this bypass valve, they don't consider it a blow-off valve. They call it a bypass valve. It came with a very long hose that went down further. Then it had another hose that went from here over to a fitting right here. So what it would do is anytime when you back off the throttle, it would release and recirculate it back into the supercharger. So I did that. Then I put this cooler back on. I wanted to make sure it was all mocked up good with the way that I put the angle here, and it was. So at that point, I just took it back off, and then step by step, I started installing what I needed to install. So the next thing I did was I installed the cooler hose that goes to the bottom of this tank. It's a 5/8 hose. I had to run it down under here, and then it actually connects to the factory cooler hose that went to the bottom of the factory reservoir that was right here for the radiator. In the kit it came with a adapter from 5/8 to a 1-inch hose, because this hose is actually a 1-inch hose. So we did that next. I was able to lay it down in there, you know, kind of nice. The next thing I had to do at that point was put the charge cooler on. I had this coupler on here. I went ahead and put it on the throttle body first, and then I just left this clamp real loose and had it slid up. And once I got the charge cooler in place, it was a little bit of a trick trying to get it in that coupler and then pulled up on this one. But once I got it in place, got it where I wanted it, I went ahead and tightened these clamps up, got done with that. If you notice, I didn't put the actual, this is a 5/16 or an 8mm head. I didn't put these on the top. I see that a lot. I like to hide them underneath. It just makes it look cleaner. I've got them underneath here so you can actually get to them. So once I got that done, I got this clamp all tightened up here. Now I was ready to continue on. The next thing I did was the radiator hose. You know, it's underneath these hoses. So this was already in place on the last video. So you had to cut the radiator hose to fit. It comes around here. It has to be extended, so they give you this coupler that extends it. Had to cut the hose here. Short piece goes on the radiator, and then this piece goes to the extender. That was the next thing. Then after that, I basically went with this hose. This is the other hose that goes to the side. This is a return hose. The bottom hose is the feed that sucks into the pump. It goes through the heat exchanger, which is in the bumper cover. Let's see if we can get a view of that. You can see it in there. It's even, you can see it through there, right there. So that's basically the heat exchanger. So it goes to the pump, from the pump to the heat exchanger, through the heat exchanger, comes back up. There's a hose that comes through here, comes right here, and then goes into the charge cooler, through the charge cooler, out of the charge cooler, and then dumps back into the reservoir. And it just makes, basically it just circulates. So this was the next hose that I had to put on. Another 5/8 hose, came with a 90. Got that in there. You can't over tighten these because these are plastic, but I wanted to make sure it was in there good. I used a sealer on it, made sure the sealer was good and dry for a couple of days before we even did this. So I did all this pretty much days ago. I want to make sure all that was dry in there, because you can't tighten these up as much as you can tighten these up, because you'll just strip them right out of that plastic. So this hose basically runs over here, goes into a male-to-male 5/8 nipple. This comes in the kit. It's a 90. It was a cut to fit. I basically cut it, went ahead and put a hose clamp on it here. And then this hose here goes to the top of the tank that comes in the kit, runs through here. I had to do some trimming so it fit up underneath this real nice. I also had to trim this so it laid down flat all the way down, because we had to relocate this power steering reservoir, and we did that in one of the other videos. So this hose basically goes right here. There's another fitting that comes in the kit that connects to the factory hose that goes right back into the radiator. Originally this hose went to the top of the factory radiator overflow bottle or coolant bottle. That's why it runs to the top of this one. So just kind of makes it look for a nice clean look. The kit comes with these type of you know, clamps instead of hose clamps, because these are kind of more of a permanent deal here. So then at that point, I was ready to put this hose on. This is a little S hose that comes in the kit. It's also cut to fit. You have to make sure you cut it to make it fit nice. Came with another 5/8 male-to-male connector. That connected to another 5/8 heater hose. It runs down, it comes out, connects to another 90-degree hose that goes into the heat exchanger. So that basically completed the whole coolant system for the intercooler. And that was pretty much it. There is also a vacuum line that's connected to the bottom of this bypass valve / blow-off valve. I've got it running nice and neat through here. I've got it all zip tied nice. It comes up through here, and then it's teed in to a factory vacuum line that feeds to the fuel rail pressure sensor. And then at that point, it was installing what I want to say is their intake, their air intake, or cold air intake, whatever you want to say. That was pretty cool. This kind of hides everything underneath there, makes it look good. Then once I got everything in place, there was a bracket right here. Let's see if I can get that in there. There was a bracket that came in the kit that bolted to these 2 bolts on the Supercharger, and it had a little bend right here that went underneath this hose clamp. And this bracket was a little bit too long. It was about a 1/2 inch too long. I didn't really want to force this over anymore because it was already pushed against here, and I had good clearance right here. So I just cut the end of the bracket off and rebent it where I needed it and got it to fit on there really nice. So that's cool. The last thing, one of the last things I did was I put this PCV valve system on here that came in the kit. It still plugs in to the factory PCV valve here, but they add one. Gives you a little extra protection, so when you're under boost, you're not pushing boost into the crankcase. So what you got to do here is, it doesn't come with these clip-on pieces. These are the factory ones. And of course there is a hard plastic tube that connects to this one, that connects to this one. You just get a razor knife, you cut the plastic tube on both ends, you pull that plastic tube off, and then you push these into these rubber hoses. They already had this made up from here to here, and it came with these new clamps. We had to cut this one to length. I left this one the same. We just cut this one. It was a little longer. Pushed them in there, and boy, they were hard to get in, let me tell you. You had to lube them up and everything to get them in. But once we got them in, we used a special tool to crimp these down, and I'll show you that tool. You can really use, so this is the tool. It's really, it's the same type of clamp that comes on like CV axle boots, stuff like that. And if you don't have one of them tools, you can use a pair of cutting, something like this. You can use something like this. You just have to do it on one side and then go and do it on the other side, and just make sure you don't cut it in half, but you can get the same result out of it. So if I can get a good picture, I can show you, well, just like this right here. You can see, you basically just squeeze them together right there, if you can see that. So that's basically, that was one of the last things we did. The very last thing was we had to do the same thing here. This had a plastic line that went from here to the factory air box. Same thing, you got to cut and get the plastic off of there. Only use one of the ends. You don't need to use the other end, just the one. This hose came in the kit with the clamp. We run it behind the alternators and alternators down there. We'll run it behind underneath the intake, It comes out right here and it runs down and then connects into the bottom of this air intake, and it's just a recirculation of that. So that pretty much finished that up, and that's really it. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot more to finish this thing up. That's why I really didn't want to, you know, video doing that. It was mostly fitting, making sure everything was situated right, before I just started throwing stuff on. So that took time, mocking it up, taking it off, you know, putting it on, taking it off. And then once I got everything where I needed it, it just all went together like a puzzle. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do a little walk around. The next video coming out is gonna be part 6. Part 6 of this Bullitt build is doing the Wilwood brakes. As you can see, they're already done. That video will be coming out shortly, so definitely check that out. We did 6 pistons in the front and 4 pistons in the back. It came with new parking brake cables, new brake line or new brake hoses, new rotors, drilled and slotted rotors. Really a nice kit, so be sure to check that video out when I release it. But as you can see, we've already got it done. We got the wheels and tires on here. These things look really cool. These are Shelby wheels with Nitto 555 G2s. They are 20 by 10 in the back, 20 by 9 in the front. And this car is really looking sweet. The color of these wheels just really set this car off, man. With the color of this car, with the color of the wheels, it just goes really good with the Supercharger look. You know, you've got that aluminum color, you've got the Bullitt strut tower brace, which is kind of a silver color that matches the wheels. It really looks nice. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm just gonna do a little walk around here of the car and just kind of show you what we got going on here. So the next thing I want to be doing, and I'll be showing you that here shortly, is installing a couple of gauges in this thing. We're doing 2 gauges with a pillar gauge pod. We're going to get started on that and then finish this video up. Okay, I am ready to install the pod on the pillar here. I went ahead and I drilled me a small hole right there, and then I used my rat tail bit. They call it a rat tail bit. See, just steps up. And obviously you don't want to go drilling blind and hit any wires, which I know there's not anything in here and there's really a big opening, but I did put drill a small hole, got me a screwdriver, kind of felt in there just to make sure there was nothing in the way. I drilled a little bit bigger of a hole with the rat tail bit, and I looked in there again, made sure, and I just kept going bigger and checking each time, made sure I didn't hit anything. Otherwise you want to take this off and do it, but I've done so many of these, I just know that there's nothing back there. So I opened the hole up big enough for these to come through. One of these is an Obd2 gauge that plugs into the Obd2 port, so that's obviously not going to fit from that, so that's why I fed from the bottom up. And I used a wire. I got an actual snake wire for snaking wires and fed it down through there, taped these up and pulled it up through, no problem. So I've already got these holes drilled, ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug in the gauges, and I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing installed. And then you see I took the side panel out right here, and I'm gonna go ahead and run them down underneath. One of them is going to go out through the floorboard. There's a wiring harness that goes through the floorboard down through there, I gotta lift it back up, take the wheel off, and pull the inner fender well back to access it, and then the wires will come up and go into the engine compartment right down through there. You're probably not going to see it, but down through there there's an opening, and that's where it's going to come up through. It's basically just going to come up. I want to cut this off. This is going to plug into the sensor, and the harness will plug into the sensor and the hose on that end. And then of course the other wires for the other gauge, one's a ground and one's a power source with the key on, and I'm gonna just tap into a power source when the key turns on. So let me get to it. Okay, I got the gauges all installed. I got the ground hooked up, power wire hooked up. The only thing I got left is I got to run the boost. This is an electric boost gauge, so it has an electric pressure switch that goes outside, then it connects to a vacuum line. And I just got to finish running that out into the engine compartment, but everything inside is done. So basically, I already went ahead and put everything back up, but inside that cover right there is the fuse panel. And there's normally a cover on it, but when we add these fuses, you can't put the cover on unless you know, make room. You got to cut the cover and all that. I'll just leave them off. Nothing really can get in there. And I'll show you here in a minute what I use. The circuit that I plug into is for the wiper motors. A lot of these circuits are key on sources, but they will stay on when you turn the key off. Unless you open the door, or they're on a timer, and they'll eventually shut off. So what I do is I tap into this fuse here, which is the wiper motor. That one is not on a timer. As soon as you turn the key off, it shuts off. So I plug into that, and I run the wire up, and I zip tie it all up underneath here, and so normally this panel is off. I went ahead and put it back on. I had this side off and the other side off, and that way you can access and run a wire straight through to the other side. So then I've already put this panel back on, but the wire, it'll run right through here. There's actually a ground wire right above here that attaches with a 10mm bolt to the metal frame up there. That's where I ground it. And then I've got that red wire that I ran from a fuse box tapped into the wire right here that runs all the way up to the gauge. Let me get this over here. So you see the gauges are all in. They look really nice. You can get these in a white face gauge with a silver bezel as well, but we just stayed with the black on black on these. So they do turn on when I turn the key on. I still got to run the, like I say, here's the wire for the boost gauge. I've already got it stuck out. There's right up under here, there's actually a wiring harness that goes out, and that's the one that's going to run into the engine compartment. And this is the Obd2 gauge. It just plugs right in. It gets its power and ground from the Obd2 port, and that one it will basically see all the parameters off the ECU, and you can pick and choose which one you want to see. It will actually show you trouble codes, so it's pretty cool. We're probably going to keep an eye on fuel pressure on this one. You can watch, you know, oil pressure, fuel pressure, I mean, just all kinds. Whatever the computer sees, you can see on this. So we'll probably set it for fuel pressure. So That'd be cool. And then this boost gauge, it has a peak. You can actually set it up to see your well, you can actually push it after you do a pull to see what your peak boost was, and then you can also have a warning set up on it for overboost. So that's pretty much it. Got that done. Okay, I wanted to show you what we use. I'm sure you guys have seen these. These are pretty cool. These are, they call it like an ADA circuit or ADA fuse. So these are for minis. You basically unplug the fuse that you want to tap into. You plug that into that location, and then the inside, the two inside holes will, that's where you're going to put the fuse that you pulled out of the fuse panel. That way it's still got protection. And then the two outside is where you would add a fuse for this wire that you're going to use for whatever you're trying to power up. Whether it's a key on or, you know, battery or whatever, the two outside will only protect this wire. It doesn't go through the inside fuse, which is really cool. So yeah, so like I say, I basically used the wiper motor fuse. It was a 10 amp fuse. I put the 10 amp fuse into the two inners, and then I used a 5 amp fuse for this because all we're doing is powering up one gauge. And that's pretty much it. So if you guys ever, instead of, you know, tapping into wires or whatever, you can just get one of these. This is what it looks like right here. Get them at any auto parts store. I'm going to call it a night. I'm going to get this back on the lift. I got to pull that wheel off. I got to pull the inner fender well back so I can access the wire going through the floorboard, and then it's going to come up through here. See if I can get a light up on it. There's actually an opening. It's hard to see, but there's an opening down there that the wiring harness comes up through. And then it's going to connect. I want to zip tie it right here, and it's going to connect to this rubber hose right here for the boost. So that is it. So I'm going to call it a night. We'll be back tomorrow to finish that. We're going to load the tune, and we're going to fire this thing up. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I'm going to do one more walk around on this car. Let's get in it and actually fire this thing up, because we pretty much got this thing finished up. I went ahead and programmed the tire sensors so the light don't come on the dash, and really can't test drive this thing because the roads are awful. But I did pull it outside, started it up, got it all warmed up, got the coolant flowing, fans coming on. No leaks, nothing. Everything sounds good. So let me get in this thing and we'll give it a fire here so we can check out these gauges. See, we got, this is just a boost gauge only. It's not a boost and vacuum, so it's not going to show anything until we get some boost. The Obd2 gauge, I've got it set for fuel pressure. It's actually seeing the fuel pressure sensor on the rail. We could we might check it out once the weather gets nice. We take this thing out. I'm going to throw it on timing. We can actually see how much timing's in this thing. Just by romping the gas right there, you see it built a little bit of boost. So this thing's going to be definitely fun to drive. we are good to go. No lights on the dash. Parking brake was on. But yeah, we're good, man. This thing is it's gonna be fun to ride. Go ahead and shut this thing off. Have to open the garage door. This thing really doesn't put out a whole lot of fumes anyway, because it does have the catalytic converters on it still. But since we are a climate controlled shop, we have heat and AC in here. We typically start them up and throw them outside to do what we got to do. So I'll go up here and open up the front door in a minute and get a little airflow through here, and it'll clean it out good, but it's not bad. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a little walk around on this before we call it the end of the video. I didn't really want to keep it running. Get us all fumed out here. Let me get a little low stance going on here. But it does look nice. Came out really good. He's definitely happy with it. He is just freaking made his day. It was a lot of work. A lot of work for sure, but it came out really nice. We're going to end up doing some other stuff to it. Once springtime rolls around, you know, weather gets a little nicer, we're going to put a aluminum drive shaft on it. We're going to do some upper and lower control arms. He thought about lowering it down about 1 inch, but he kind of likes the way it sits right now. These wheels and tires are actually at 1 inch taller than the factory wheels and tires, so it pretty much, you know, gives you a little extra inch there around the fender well, or ½ an inch on either side of the tires, I guess you could say. So but yeah, he's going to kind of cruise around with it like that for a while and see how he likes it. Let's get one last view in here. Yeah, I like that dash. It's kind of a carbon fiber stainless steel look to it. Let's go around to the other side, open the door on this side, get a view across the passenger seat. Yeah, she looks good. You know, it's just going to be kind of clean, not too much. You know, just do 2 gauges. Thought about doing 3. Thought about doing an AFR, you know, wideband, Obd2 gauge. But with the stock catalytic converters, there's not really a good place to put the sensor, the wideband, in front of the converters. There's just really no room there. They're so close to the exhaust manifolds. And you really don't want to do them in the back, you know, behind the converters. They just don't read correctly 100%. And they're slow. They'll read slow. Let me shut this door. So we just, you know, chose not to do that. It'll be fine. Maybe down the road, if we do some different exhausts, do some long tubes, do some high flow cats, then we can go ahead and do an AFR gauge. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and call it quits on this video. This has been a long build process on this thing. Don't forget to check out the next video that I'll be releasing, which is going to be installing the Wilwood brakes front and back on that deal. So you'll see that, and then you'll of course see the wheels and tires on there too. So I do appreciate you guys checking this video out. Please like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell, because we're going to have some more videos coming out. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good day, and we'll see you on the next video.